So growing up, if you had asked me what was King David most remembered for, I likely would have looked back into my child's Sunday school days and said something like, David was a man after God's own heart. David was one of the good guys of the Bible, right? One whom God loved, and we should model our lives around that. But then I grew up, and I read the rest of the story. And I realized that there's some stories that they don't teach you in children's Sunday school class. Because after the David and Goliath story that we all know, and after David becomes king of all Israel, there's the story of David and Bathsheba. A story of sexual misconduct, of abuse, of adultery, and of murder of his friend and trusted soldier, Uriah. Just for fun, as I was preparing for this sermon, I went into my children's room and grabbed one of their picture Bibles to see if the story of Bathsheba was in there. It wasn't. So there are things that we just don't teach our children at that young age. For good reason, right? And yet, David is remembered as a man after God's own heart. But you know, growing up and reading the rest of that story, it was actually the parts that I didn't learn as a kid that captivated me the most about David. How did this very flawed king end up being remembered so favorably? Well, I think the possible answer to that question might strike at the very heart of our conversation this morning about guilt and shame.